The Hound of the Baskervilles, 1902. Episode 1. The Curse Legend. Welcome back, fellow detectives. After completing our journey through The Return of Sherlock Holmes, we now embark on what many consider the greatest Sherlock Holmes adventure ever written, a tale that takes us from the gaslit streets of London to the windswept moors of Devonshire, where ancient curses and modern murders collide in terrifying ways. Have you ever heard a dog howling in the night and felt a primal fear? What if I told you that some hounds are more than just animals, that they can be instruments of revenge, symbols of guilt, and harbingers of death? Prepare yourself for a mystery where the supernatural and the scientific battle for supremacy, and where Holmes must confront a legend that has destroyed generations of a noble family. Picture yourself at Baker Street on a foggy October morning in 1889. Yes, this case actually occurred before Holmes's death at Reichenbach Falls, though it's one of the most significant investigations of his career. You're examining a curious walking stick left behind by an early morning visitor, trying your hand at Holmes's deductive methods. "What do you make of it, Watson?" Holmes asks with an amused smile, watching you study the thick, sturdy cane. You notice the inscription, "To James Mortimer, MRCS, from his friends of the CCH, and a date from 5 years ago. Well, you venture, it belongs to a country doctor. The initials suggest member of the Royal College of Surgeons. The CCH might be a small country hospital where he worked." Holmes nods approvingly. "Excellent. And what else can you deduce about Dr. Mortimer himself?" You examine the cane more closely. The stick is well worn but carefully maintained. There are teeth marks near the handle. He must own a dog that carried it for him. A large dog, judging by the spacing of the marks. "Bravo, Watson," Holmes exclaims. "You're learning my methods admirably, and here comes Dr. Mortimer himself to reclaim his stick." Indeed, footsteps are heard on the stairs, and a tall, thin man enters, scholarly-looking with a gentle manner but anxious eyes. Dr. James Mortimer introduces himself and immediately launches into the reason for his visit. "Mr. Holmes, I come to you with a most singular and disturbing matter. 3 months ago, Sir Charles Baskerville died under mysterious circumstances at his estate in Devonshire. The official verdict was heart failure, but I believe, though I can scarcely credit it myself, that he may have been literally frightened to death. Think about this carefully, detective. What could frighten a man so badly that his heart simply stops? What kind of terror is so overwhelming that it kills without leaving a mark?" Holmes gestures for Mortimer to sit. "Tell me everything, Dr. Mortimer. Begin with Sir Charles himself. What kind of man was he?" Mortimer settles into his chair. Sir Charles was a wealthy man who'd made his fortune in South African speculation. He returned to England a few years ago and restored the Baskerville estate, which had fallen into ruin. He was generous, kind-hearted, and deeply committed to helping the local community. "But he was also troubled," Mortimer continues, his voice dropping. "He suffered from heart disease, yes, but more than that, he was haunted by the family legend, the curse of the Baskervilles." Watson leans forward with interest. "A curse? What sort of curse?" Mortimer pulls out an ancient manuscript from his bag. This document dates from 1742. It tells the story of how the curse began. May I read it to you? It's essential to understanding what happened to Sir Charles. Holmes nods. "Please do. I'm always interested in legends, though I rarely believe them." Mortimer unfolds the yellowed parchment and begins to read in a solemn voice. "Of the origin of the Hound of the Baskervilles, there have been many statements. Yet as I come in a direct line from Hugo Baskerville, I have set down this tale as it was told to me by my father, who heard it from his father before him. The story that unfolds is like something from a Gothic nightmare. In the year 1640, during the time of Civil War, Baskerville Hall was held by Hugo Baskerville, a wild, profane man who was feared throughout the countryside for his cruelty and debauchery. Hugo became obsessed with the daughter of a local farmer, a beautiful, virtuous young woman who wanted nothing to do with him. One Michaelmas, when her father and brothers were away, Hugo and his wicked companions kidnapped the girl and brought her to Baskerville Hall. They locked her in an upper chamber, Mortimer reads, while Hugo and his friends made merry downstairs, drinking and carousing as was their nightly custom. The poor maiden, hearing the terrible oaths and songs rising from below, was driven mad with terror. In her desperation, she climbed from the window using the ivy that covered the south wall and fled across the moor toward her home. Can you imagine that terrifying flight, detective? A young woman running across the dark moorland, knowing that behind her was a monster in human form who would show no mercy if he caught her. Some little time later, Hugo discovered that his prisoner had escaped. He flew into a terrible rage, and in his fury, he swore a blasphemous oath. He declared that he would give his body and soul to the powers of evil if he might but overtake the girl. Hugo called for his horse, unleashed his pack of hounds, and rode out onto the moor in pursuit, his drunken friends following behind. They rode for miles across the desolate moorland, the hounds baying in the darkness, until they came upon Hugo's hounds. But the hounds were not chasing the girl, Mortimer continues, his voice trembling slightly. They had stopped at a clearing and were whimpering and cowering, unwilling to go forward. And there, in the center of the clearing, they found the body of the young maiden, dead from exhaustion and terror. But that was not the worst of it. Mortimer's voice drops to barely above a whisper. Beyond her body, they saw Hugo Baskerville lying dead upon the ground. And standing over him, its jaws clamped upon his throat, was a great black beast, shaped like a hound, yet larger than any hound that mortal eye has ever rested upon. As they watched, frozen in horror, the creature tore out Hugo's throat. Then it turned its blazing eyes upon them, eyes that glowed with hellfire in the darkness. The men fled in terror, and 3 of them died that very night from what they had seen. From that day to this, the Baskerville family has been cursed. Death in strange and terrible forms has pursued every heir who has inherited the estate. The room falls silent as Mortimer finishes reading. The ancient tale hangs in the air like a malevolent presence. Holmes breaks the silence. A colorful legend, Dr. Mortimer. But surely you don't believe that a supernatural hound has been stalking the Baskerville family for 250 years. Mortimer looks troubled. I am a man of science, Mr. Holmes. Everything in my training tells me that such things are impossible. Yet I cannot explain what happened to Sir Charles. Let me describe the circumstances of his death. He pulls out a newspaper clipping. 3 months ago, Sir Charles announced his intention to go to London the next day. That evening, as was his custom, he took a walk down the famous Yew Alley of Baskerville Hall, a long path bordered by ancient yew trees leading to the moor gate. He was in the habit of walking there before bed, Mortimer explains. The Yew Alley is over a 1/4 mile long, very dark, and rather gloomy even during the day. Sir Charles would walk to the gate at the far end, smoke a cigar, and then return to the house. Think about this setting, detective. An ancient pathway, lined with twisted yew trees that block out the moonlight, leading from a manor house to the wild moor beyond. Can you imagine a more perfect setting for supernatural terror? That night, Sir Charles never returned from his walk, Mortimer continues. At midnight, his butler, a man named Barrymore, became concerned and went looking for him with a lantern. He found Sir Charles's body lying near the moor gate. Watson asks the crucial question, were there signs of violence? How did he die? Mortimer shakes his head. That's what makes it so disturbing. There were no wounds, no signs of struggle. The official verdict was death from heart failure. His weak heart simply gave out. But, Holmes prompts, sensing there's more to the story. Mortimer leans forward. But the expression on Sir Charles's face was one of absolute terror. His features were distorted with horror, and his eyes were staring at something beyond the gate, something on the moor. Whatever he saw in his final moments, it frightened him literally to death. And there's something else. Mortimer's voice drops even lower. Something I told no one, not even at the inquest. Near the body, clearly visible on the soft earth, were the footprints. Holmes sits up with sharp attention. Footprints? Whose footprints? Mortimer takes a deep breath. Sir Charles had walked slowly down the Yew Alley. His cigarette ash showed he'd paused several times. But about 50 yards from the moor gate, something changed. The character of his footprints altered completely. Altered how? Watson asks, fascinated despite himself. Mortimer looks at them both with haunted eyes. He had been walking on his toes. From that point onwards, he was running for his life, running toward the house, away from something on the moor. But he never made it, Mortimer continues. He collapsed near the gate, his heart giving out from terror and exertion. And there, on the ground beside his body, clearly visible in the soft earth. He pauses, as if reluctant to say the words. "Go on," Holmes urges. Mortimer's voice is barely audible. The footprints of a gigantic hound. The impact of this revelation fills the room. Watson looks shocked. You feel a chill run down your spine, but Holmes's expression remains skeptical. "You saw these footprints yourself, Dr. Mortimer?" Mortimer nods. "I did, Mr. Holmes. I was called to examine the body. The prints were as clear as day, enormous paw prints far larger than any normal dog's. They approached from the moor, came close to where Sir Charles fell, and then retreated back toward the marshland." Holmes steeples his fingers thoughtfully. "And yet you did not mention these prints at the inquest?" Mortimer looks uncomfortable. "How could I? What magistrate would credit such a story? They would have thought me mad. Besides, what purpose would it serve? Sir Charles was already dead. No earthly court could punish a supernatural creature, if such exists." "But now there's more at stake," Mortimer explains urgently. "Sir Charles's heir has arrived from Canada. Sir Henry Baskerville, the last surviving member of the family, is now in London preparing to take possession of his inheritance. If the curse is real, if something truly did kill Sir Charles, then Sir Henry's life is in terrible danger." Holmes begins pacing, his mind clearly racing. "Tell me about Sir Henry. What kind of man is he?" Mortimer smiles slightly. "Young, vigorous, and determined. He's been farming in Canada for years and knows nothing of the curse or the legend. He's eager to restore the estate and fulfill his duty to the family name." "Does he know about the circumstances of Sir Charles's death?" Watson asks. Mortimer nods. "I've told him everything, including the legend. To his credit, he refuses to be frightened off. He insists on going to Baskerville Hall despite the danger. That's why I've come to you, Mr. Holmes. I need your advice. Should I allow Sir Henry to go to Devonshire, or should I insist he stay away?" Holmes stops pacing and turns to Mortimer. "Dr. Mortimer, you present me with a fascinating problem. If I understand correctly, you're asking me, a man of logic and reason, to investigate a curse. You want me to determine whether a supernatural hound, the ghost of an evil man's sins, is murdering the Baskerville heirs. I'm asking you to keep Sir Henry Baskerville alive," Mortimer responds simply, "by whatever means necessary. Whether you believe in curses or not, something killed Sir Charles, and that something may be waiting on the moor for the new heir." Can you see the dilemma Holmes faces here, Detective? He's built his entire career on rational deduction, on proving that every mystery has a logical explanation. But this case asks him to consider the impossible, that some crimes might have supernatural causes. Holmes makes his decision. "Very well, Dr. Mortimer. Bring Sir Henry Baskerville to Baker Street tomorrow morning. I want to meet this young man who's willing to claim a cursed inheritance. In the meantime, Watson and I will investigate the legend more thoroughly. Every mystery, no matter how supernatural it appears, has a rational explanation, if one looks hard enough." After Mortimer leaves, Watson turns to Holmes. "Do you believe any of this? The curse? The demon hound?" Holmes lights his pipe thoughtfully. "I believe that something frightened Sir Charles Baskerville badly enough to kill him. Whether that something was a large dog, a clever murderer, or simply the man's own superstitious fears remains to be seen. But consider the facts," Holmes continues. "A wealthy man dies under mysterious circumstances. A young heir arrives to claim an inheritance. If there's no supernatural curse, then we might be looking at something even more dangerous. A human murderer with a motive, using an ancient legend as cover for modern crime. Think about this possibility, Detective. What if the curse of the Baskervilles is actually the perfect murder weapon? If you wanted to kill someone and make it look like supernatural intervention, what better way than to use a legend everyone already believes in?" Holmes spends the rest of the day researching the Baskerville family history. He discovers a pattern. Over the centuries, many Baskerville heirs have died young, often in violent or mysterious ways. Some died in duels, some in accidents, some from sudden illnesses, but not all. Some lived to old age peacefully. If this is truly a supernatural curse, Holmes observes, it's remarkably inconsistent. Real curses don't take holidays or spare certain family members. But a human murderer with a specific motive might only target specific heirs, those whose deaths would benefit the killer. Watson is intrigued. So you think someone is murdering the Baskervilles and using the legend as camouflage? Holmes nods. It's the most logical explanation. But I must meet Sir Henry before I can theorize further. Everything depends on what kind of man he is and who might benefit from his death. As night falls over Baker Street, you all sit in contemplative silence. Somewhere in Devonshire, on the windswept moors, Baskerville Hall waits, ancient, isolated, surrounded by treacherous marshland and twisted legends. And somewhere on those moors, whether beast or human, something may be waiting for the new heir. So tell me, detective, do you believe in the curse of the Baskervilles? Could a supernatural hound really be stalking this family for centuries? Or is there a more sinister, more human explanation for the terror on the moors? And most importantly, what would it take to make a rational man like Sherlock Holmes consider the possibility of the supernatural? This opening episode sets the stage for what Holmes himself will call one of the most singular and interesting cases I have ever handled. A mystery that will take us from the intellectual comfort of Baker Street to the primal terror of Dartmoor, where ancient evil and modern ambition collide in the most unexpected ways. Join me next time as we meet Sir Henry Baskerville himself and witness the first signs that someone, or something, has already marked him for death. The curse is awakening, and the game is about to become deadly serious. Until then, remember, sometimes the greatest horrors are not the legends we fear, but the truths they conceal.